But it's interesting, Rob, because you do have two of the best duos in the league, right, going at it. You've got Luka Doncic, who is the best player in this. Maybe you disagree. Would you agree that Luka is the best player in this series?
Yeah, as far as what he's been able to accomplish thus far, for sure.
So Luka and Kyrie on the Dallas side, of course, against Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown on the Celtics side. So it may not come down to them. I mean, obviously they're stars. They have to play well. But oftentimes we've seen it, Rob, role players can make the difference. But of the duos, which of these duos do you trust more?
That's a good question. That's a great question. Because the only reason I would say the Kyrie-Luka tandem is only because of Kyrie's success and that he has a championship in what he's done. I'm picking the Celtics, and I think these guys are finally going to break through, Chris. But going in, if I'm looking at it, you know what I mean? It's hard for me to really say those two guys, and just because they just haven't been able to do it yet. And it doesn't mean that everybody breaks through. Everybody doesn't have a championship until you have a championship.
Right.
So it's a different question, right? Then who do I expect to come through and figure will come through? And I know we've seen stuff. I bet you the separation between the duos is probably not as big as people think it is, right? Numbers wise.
If I had to, like I said, I think Luka is the best player of the four, or in the series, period. I think Jayson Tatum second. Jaylen Brown, I would go third because of his defense. And then Kyrie, I would go fourth. And so, even though Luka's the best, I think it's a really good matchup. It's interesting because when you ask that question initially, I think the automatic thought for just about everybody, particularly people outside of Boston, is Dallas.
Right.
Like that, right? Like the clutch. And that's why one reason I picked Dallas was because I felt like a lot of these games are going to be close. And if it's in the clutch time, who do I trust more? There is no question that it is Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. They are individually two of the best closers in the game. Period, the end. And they're both on the same team. We know that Jayson Tatum has had struggles closing games and in the clutch. And Jaylen Brown is offensively, he is clearly the least talented of the four offensively. And so that's why I would trust Dallas more. And I do think that's why ultimately they're going to win this series, because I think these games will be close. And if you look at Dallas against OKC, outplayed much of the game and in certain instances. And then in the fourth quarter, second half of the fourth quarter, they take over and pull out. Same thing against Minnesota. Minnesota had leads in almost every game late in the game, and Dallas was the team that was clutch. But surprisingly, Rob G has some numbers that say in clutch time, now this is their entire careers, not just this season.
Right.
But that in clutch time, the numbers are a lot closer than most people would probably think. Rob G, let's hear those numbers.
Yeah, it really would blow your socks off, because we all know Kyrie Irving hit arguably the biggest shot in NBA Finals history there in that Game 7.
Well, that's it, right?
Right.
But that's
and then even most recently, Luka Doncic hits the game winner against Minnesota. What was that, in Game 2? So those two guys, their reputation already precedes them. That's not even factoring in, if you look at the last minute of a playoff game, either to tie or take the lead, Kyrie and Luka combined 7 for 9, 77% from the field.
That's incredible.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right?
I've never heard clutch numbers like that.
And yet, and again, their reputation, it precedes them.
right.
Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum have this reputation, at least Tatum specifically, that they're not clutch, that they don't perform well in these situations, that they get mucked up and bogged down, and that it gets ugly. Those two guys in the same scenario, last minute of a playoff game to tie or take the lead, a very respectful 47% from the field. But here's the thing. Tatum has made the most go-ahead shots of any of the four guys.
Now that you
This
wouldn't
is
believe.
in his career?
In his playoff career.
In the last minute.
In the
playoff career.
In the
not
last minute of a game to tie or take the lead. And that's
So he's the anti-Steph
He's
Curry.
played, he's played probably more,
right. And those
way
again,
more playoff games than either of those guys.
Kyrie and Luka again have 9 shots combined. Brown and Tatum combined have 17 attempts. So I'm sure if you give Kyrie and Luka 17 attempts, it's not going to be 77% clip anymore.
No, that's
down.
incredible clip.
And then if you extrapolate, if you take it, hey, well, the last minute's very specific. Let's expound it. Let's make it longer. Let's even factor in the regular season. In those same situations, playoff and regular season, Luka and Kyrie in the final minute shoot 40%, which is very good in those situations. Tatum and Brown, 40%.
Well, it's interesting because, there was all the talk about Tatum being a poor clutch player, and the stats backed it up this season. But Boston itself was a good clutch team. They were one of the top clutch teams in the league. Their star wasn't clutch, but they were. Jaylen Brown, we saw him hit the big shots against Indiana. If you go back to last season, remember Derek White, Rob, against Miami? Dude hit some huge shots. So, I am surprised at how high those numbers are for both of them, both groups. But I still think, regardless of what the numbers say, I still think that Kyrie and Luka have the clear edge when it comes to clutch play. And I think a big reason, Rob, is because they're so versatile. I feel like one of the keys to being a clutch player is having a mid-range game. Because if I'm attacking the defense and I've got a mid-range game, they're not sure what I'm going to do. I might pull up for the 3. I might go all the way to the hoop, or I might stop on the dime and shoot the mid-range. And so you don't know what I'm going to do, so it's harder for you to defend me. Whereas guys that don't really have that mid-range pull-up jumper, I know you're either, depending on your history, you're either going to the hole, and I'm going to defend you there, or you're going to take a 3. And so Kyrie and Luka score at every level, in the paint, at the rim, mid-range, great three-point shooters, and then great passers. If you double, they can spray it out to the shooters, or they can lob it up to one of their bigs for a dunk, both of them. So they're just so versatile that it is incredible. And I think that's what makes them so tough to defend in the clutch. And you look at Luka against Minnesota, Rob, and Jaden McDaniels, who's one of the best defenders in the league on the perimeter, he guarded him well a lot of times. And Luka was able, he knows how to use his body, knows how to use his strength to get just enough room to fade a little and then get his jumper off and his butter in the mid-range especially. So that's why I think they're so tough to guard. I don't think anyone would argue, Rob, that Brown and Tatum, either of them have the offensive package that Luka and Kyrie have, and that's why I take the Dallas duo.
Yeah. I get the aesthetics, Chris, and how it looks, but if it goes in, that's all that you care about and you worry. It's just like the Celtics and how they win. They don't always win pretty and look like, man, this is great, and look at this team and their well-oiled machine. No, it's not like that. Not at all, but they seem to keep winning and win at a high pace. So I think at some point you just got to accept that this is who they are, that it's not going to be pretty, but they know how to win, and they've won a lot. And I just think this is their time and their situation, Chris. It's not because they're a million miles better than the Mavericks or the Mavericks haven't had a great run and whatnot. I just think it's the Celtics' time. Not based on anything else other than they've put in the work. They've had their disappointments. A lot of teams have won like that. You know, where like I remember the bad boy Pistons. You know, you kept having the disappointments, Chris, and whatnot, and you go, are they ever going to win?
You never would have thought they were going to beat the Shaq Kobe Lakers, even as that team. You remember that, Rob, because they had their issues throughout the season. But it was like, okay, they're finally clicking. You remember that when they were going into those finals,
right?
It was like, okay,
no, everybody
they had beaten Garnett and Sprewell and Cassell in Minnesota.
Everybody thought it was going to be a cake. I told you this story before, and I think it was J. Adonde, who was a columnist at the LA Times at the time. And after the Pistons won, Chris, game 1, and then the Lakers won game 2. You remember Kobe with the 3?
Yep.
And then I remember him saying, "Oh, okay, series over now. The Pistons got their one. We're
Did
not."
he write that?
He was talking about, just talking, on the dinner before the game. So that was it. Then the Pistons win game 3 in Detroit, and Jay is like, all right, well, they got one at home. Now the Lakers will win the next 3. And they won again. The Pistons won again. And I was like, Jay, there are no more games. You're running out of games.
Right. And it was, that was a huge upset. Very few people saw that coming. Yeah. But yeah, I would say this though, Rob. I don't think Boston necessarily wins ugly. They're known for blowing teams out. You know what I mean? They had close games against Indiana. My issue with that was just, why are they so close? Every game pretty much so close with a team that's young, not a great team to begin with, and they're injury depleted. So that's more of it. But Boston, they blew out Miami in every game, all 4 wins. I think,
but Miami was shorthanded too.
Close.
But they beat them up.
But I'm just saying, they even during the regular season they were blowing teams out. So they were winning. It's when their shot is falling as so much. It is. They rely on the 3, and when it's going, they're gonna be tough to beat.
And that's how you get blown out. Yeah,
that.
Right.
It's not going well. So.